Greetings LEGO and D&D nerds, my name is Ian and today I've got something a little bit different for you. If you've been following my channel since the beginning, then you'll remember that when I first started out I was building a map to go along with every monster I built in every episode of Brick Bestiary. And eventually I just sort of fell off doing that, mostly because it was time consuming for me to think of some sort of encounter to incorporate every monster I was building, and then I had to put together a map as well as the creature. And I decided that if I wanted to do more map stuff, I would just break that out into separate videos and focus on the monster for the Brick Bestiary episodes. But since then, it's actually been a while since I've done anything map related, and I would like to get back to that. I do want to build some actual full maps again, but I also want to take some episodes and devote them to pieces of scattered terrain or little set pieces that are useful in multiple scenarios and handy to have around as things that you can just grab off your shelf and put into a map to assemble a scene. So today we're going to be building a little set piece like that, this Roman Ballista. Now, it should be no secret to any fan of LEGO that the LEGO brand loves making things that shoot other things. We've got this one, and 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 then of course this one. And how could we forget about this one? This one shot the furthest across the room, in case you were wondering. And that's probably not even all of the various kinds of stud shooters or missile launchers that LEGO has incorporated into their builds over the years. Basically, they will find any excuse possible to put the "don't shoot your sibling in the eye" warning on the box. In fact, I have here an old medieval ballista from an early castle set. This one makes use of those flick fire missiles. And something like this is certainly fun to add to an encounter, but this ballista I'm going to be building today is extra cool because it uses the same firing mechanism that an actual Roman ballista uses. If you're not familiar, I have a slightly larger wooden model here. These ballista, also known as scorpions, are torsion ballista, which means that they use a spring for tension, and the spring is actually coiled rope. You can see very easily in this model that these twists of rope are what puts tension on the bow arms, and then I can load this up and pull the pin, and it fires. And that is a little bit of ancient technology that we can very easily incorporate into this LEGO build with just the addition of some string. So I'm going to show you how I put this thing together, and then we'll talk about ways that you could add it to your encounter. Here are all the pieces we're going to need to build our ballista, and we're going to do it in a few individual parts and then assemble them all at the end. So let's start with the sort of arrow track. We're going to take this 2x10 plate and we're going to stack a 2x8 plate on top of it and a 2x4 plate on the bottom, all lining up at the front like this. Then I'm going to take 12 cheese slopes, 6 per side. I'm going to start one from the end of this 2x8 plate, and I'm just going to create a channel with them on one side and the other side. This is going to be this sort of V track that our arrow sits in that guides it down the ballista. Then I'm going to take one of these plates with a bar on it, attach it to the back with a clip, and I'll put a tile on the clip. This will be a sort of kickstand at the back and allow us to adjust the angle that we're firing at. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside, and we'll build the arm mount next. We're going to take 2 of these Technic bricks that are 1x6, and then I'll take 2 of these axle holders. We're going to put the blue axle to pin adapters in each end. I'm going to attach one here in the second pinhole from the end, and then I'll make one more and put it on the other side and sandwich this other Technic brick in between them. I'm going to put some tiles on the front, and I'm going to take these 2 inverted slopes and put them on the bottom of one side, and then we will set this piece aside for now. I'm going to take one of these axle pieces and 2 cartwheels and attach them as they are intended. Then I'm going to take a tile and a jumper plate and put them on the studs of the axle. I have one of these 5-pin long Technic bars, and I'm going to put a double pin in one end and a half pin in the middle and at the other end. Then I'm going to take this jumper stud and I'm going to attach it into this open pin socket on the bar here. Now I'll grab my front assembly and attach the pin to this center point here, and I'll grab my track and I'm going to attach the 2 half pins to the bottom studs on this brown plate right here. Now on the back of this, we're going to have a winch assembly so that you can draw back the bow. So I'm going to build that next. We're going to take a 2x4 plate. I'm going to take 2 1x2 plates and stack them on either end. On one side, I'll put a brick with a single Technic pinhole, and then the other side, I'm going to put this longer 1x4, but I'm going to line it up like this. I'll put a tile on top of each of those just to hide the studs, like that. And then I'm going to take this axle. This is a 6-stud long Technic axle. I'm going to start it into this pinhole, and then I'm going to add one of these spacer pieces. This will be where the string attaches, so we're actually going to need to take this back apart later. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and slide it on. And then this side will receive one of these gears, and this side will receive one of these winch crank pieces. Then I'm going to put a pin in the end hole here, and one of these pin to axle 90-degree pieces with a bar in it. This will flip over and mesh with the gear teeth so that it forms a ratchet. It cannot turn this way, but it can turn this way, allowing us to wind back the bow. And then when we're ready to fire, we pull this lever. This assembly is going to connect right on the end like that. Then I'm going to take 2 of these 1x4 plates that have 2 missing studs in the center, and I'm going to make a stack 2 studs tall with gray studs on the ends. Then I have 2 1x8 tiles that I'm going to put on top of those studs to form a sort of track here. This track will attach on the 2 ends of our little arrow slot on the exposed studs, and these plates on top will serve as a guide for the string so that it doesn't snap up over the arrow. Next, we're going to build the bow arms themselves. Starting with a 1x4 plate and a 1x2 plate in the center, I'm going to take 2 clips that have a solid ring and place one on each end, and then lock it all together with a 1x4 tile. I'm going to need 2 of those, 1 arm for each side, so I'm going to build another one the exact same way. Just like that, and then these will be attached here with string. But our last little sub-assembly before we start stringing up the ballista is going to be this little stock that connects to the string and forces the arrow forward. We're going to use this Technic pin on the underside of a 1x2 plate. I'm going to take a snot L bracket that is 1x1 and place it down across the front, and then I'll fill in that gap with a plate and put a tile there like so. Then I'm going to use one of these tooth pieces. I'm using a metallic silver one on the front of that bracket. This will fit into the track and kind of guide the arrow out so that it doesn't slip underneath. This stud will go on the bottom, but I will also need to be adding a string to that. So we're going to set this piece aside for now and talk about stringing up the ballista. Now I'm going to be using embroidery floss in order to string this, so I picked some up at the store. It doesn't super matter what string you use. Yarn might be a little bit too thick and thread is definitely too thin. So this embroidery floss looks like it's going to work well. It's about the same thickness as some of the official Lego strings, but we can easily cut it to the lengths that we need. And I didn't want to use something that was made of nylon, like a paracord, because it's hard to get small knots tied in nylon that don't kind of slip themselves loose. So before we string up the stock here, I've actually decided to make a slight alteration to my design. I'm going to put one of these full ring clips here on the end so I can tie a proper knot instead of just wedging the string in between. So I'll just replace that plate with this ring, and then I won't need the silver stud on the bottom. I'm going to pass my string through the open ring and tie a double knot as tightly as I can right here. All right, that's pretty tight. And now I will trim off some of this excess here, but not too much. I don't want the knot to pull through. Next, I'm going to cut this off with plenty of excess. We're not going to need this much string, but I'm not exactly sure how much I'm going to need yet, so I want to make sure I have plenty. I'm going to pull this Technic axle out so that I can use this spacer to connect my string. I'm going to thread the string through this slot that's in the side. It's a little bit tricky, but can be done. And then I just need to coax it out the ends. I'm using this spear for that because some of the threads aren't cooperating. All right, there we go. Spacer is now threaded on here. I'm going to kind of line up this stock about as far forward as it'll slide in the track, and then I'm going to bring the spacer in line with the Technic pins. So I'm going to need about that much string. So this is where I want my knot. I'm going to hold the string in place and tie the knot here. Now that that's tight, I'm going to once again trim off most of this excess string, and then I'm going to reattach our winch axle here. It's going to be a little tougher to thread through because I've just got to push that floss out of the way, but it will go in fairly easily, and I can reattach the gear on this side. I want this stock piece to be centered. It's not really going to move around much, especially now that it's a little bit tighter because there's a layer of the floss in there. But as you can see, when I crank this backwards, it starts winding the string and it draws the stock back. And I'm pushing forward on this with my thumb, but it can't go anywhere because of this ratchet, at least until I pop the lever, and then it releases the tension. Now to string the arms in place, I'm going to be using this 12 long plate as a measuring stick. Doesn't really matter how wide the plate is, I'm just going for the length of 12 studs here. And I'm going to make a loop of string that fits around it. So I've cut a piece that is plenty long enough, well over double the length here, and I'm just going to center it, and I'm just going to tighten it around the length of the plate like this, and I want to tie a knot as close to the end as I can here. Good, and for this one, I'm going to go ahead and triple knot because these ropes are going to be under the most tension. Now I'm going to trim all but a couple millimeters here, and then I'm going to slide this to the corner until I can pop it off and set the plate aside. So now I have two of these loops, and I'm going to show you how to attach them to the front. I'm actually going to partially disassemble us here so that I can work with just the front and not the whole ballista. It'll make things a little easier. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to take two of these little claw pieces on bars, and I'm going to place them in the ends of the two Technic pins down here. Now these could be replaced with just a 2-stud long bar. All they are going to do is serve as a stop for this T-piece that is going to be holding our tension. So we don't want it to be able to rotate freely, so it's going to hit these and stop. I'll do the same thing on the top, but I need to be able to tension those ones first. So I'm going to take two of these T-bar pieces, one of my coils of rope and one of my arms. I'm going to spread the rope out between my fingers, and then I'm going to double it back. So I have two loops at each end, right? One of the T-bars is going to go through these loops here. I'm going to bunch this end together. I'm going to twist it up because this is a little tricky. Now I need to fish it, the whole thing, up through here, keeping it from falling off. I'll pull it tight at the bottom, still don't want that coming loose. And then I gotta fish it up through the next hole. Got it. This would be a lot easier if I had a third hand here. Now I want to separate the two loops at the top. I'm holding them in the middle to keep tension on the bottom T here. And I'm just gonna kind of use this spear to pry them apart like that. There we go. And I'm going to lace my other T-bar through them like that. I'll keep this pulled to the side so I don't lose tension here, and I want to spread the cord in between the middle, and I want to insert my arm in between the cords like that. Okay, and now this is the hard part here. I need to hold this all together, and I need to twist the cords. And I want to twist this looking down clockwise. And the trick is I don't want to go too far on just the top. So I'm going to twist it, I'm going to hold it in place with my fingers, I'm going to carefully pull the pin out of the bottom, and I'm going to twist the bottom one counterclockwise. And I can feel this tightening down, right? As I put twists into these cables, it's tightening them down. I'm losing the slack here. You can see this one kind of holds itself in place even when I let go. I'm going to put the pin back in, and I'm going to put a pin in the top, and I might need to tension these down a little more, but you can already see that this wants to tip forward. That's why the direction of the twisting is important. The top one needs to go clockwise, the bottom one needs to go counterclock. You want the twist in both directions to be pulling the arm into this forward position. And now I just need to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so I got it threaded through, and I just wanted to clarify that on the other side now, I am reversing the direction of the twist. So the top one is getting twisted clockwise, and the bottom one is going to get twisted counterclockwise. So I got a few twists on the top one here, and then this one is going to go clockwise until we tighten it down. There we go. And then I got to get that pin back in there. I need more fingers. Okay, now I'm going to reassemble the ballista, so this piece goes back on the bottom, and then the track snaps back onto those two half pins. Just like that, except now I have my arms that do want to pivot forward. So the last thing to string is the arms themselves. Once again, I'm going to start with a nice length of the embroidery floss here that's plenty long enough so I don't have to worry about it being difficult to tie the knots. I'm first going to thread it through one of the rings on the end of an arm, and I'm going to tie as tightly as I can a knot to the end here. Now I'm going to take the other end. I want to go under this tile here and then through the pinhole on the stock and then under this tile like that. You can take the tiles off to make that a little easier if you want. And now I want the string to rest where the arms are just about flat at the front like this. So I'm going to try to hold them in place while I thread this through. Now that I have it where I want it, I'm going to pinch it in place and try to tie a knot without moving where I have the string. And all right, so I've now strung our bow. I can pull it back and we have some tension on the arms. If I want to tighten that tension, which I do a little bit, I left it a tad loose for stringing purposes. I just need to pull out these pins and rotate these T's a little bit further. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm only going to go partial turn more on each of them. You want to try to make sure that the tension on each arm is pretty balanced so that when it fires evenly and one arm doesn't pull more than the other arm. All right, now I think we are ready to go ahead and test this out. I'm going to flip our ratchet in place and I'm going to crank it underhand. We want the rope to go underneath so that the ratchet clicks into place. I'm going to crank it back until that ring hits the spacer. And then this ballista is designed to be fired using Lego spears, or these pikes if you want to get really fancy would also work. So I'm just going to load a spear in the front. I can use the kickstand at the back to adjust the angle that I'm firing at, and when I'm ready, all I have to do is pull this back and it launches the spear forward. If you want the spear to go a little further, you can just put more tension on the ropes, but you want to be careful and not put too much tension because eventually something will break. It will probably be the rope, but if you're constructing it out of a lot of brown pieces, there's always the chance that it will be the plastic. This does not take me a lot of force right now to push back, so I could probably go at least another half turn on each one. So there you guys have it. That is a more or less minifig scale version of a Roman Scorpion Ballista. I think this is a really cool piece to add to an environment because it gives the players another option for a way to make a really big attack against an enemy in a really cool way that they're going to be immediately drawn towards. I originally built this and had it as part of the broken horde in a dragon's lair, so it was missing a wheel and kind of propped up against some ice, and as soon as the players saw it, they were like, okay, well, we have to get to the ballista and fire it. And the cool thing is, they actually could fire it. I mean, it didn't go very far or hit anything. I still had to roll for the attack, but they absolutely ate up the fact that they could crank it back and fire off a shot and then roll to see if they hit. You could put these on the walls of a city. You could put them as defense against an incoming ship or a horde of some kind of monsters. This could be a way for them to get in some heavy hits and level the playing field a little bit. Also, it's just really cool. Working Lego Siege equipment is very cool. So let me know in the comments down below how you think this turned out and how you would use it in an encounter yourselves. I'll be trying to do some more map stuff coming up here in the future, but I'm not sure exactly what that's gonna look like yet. So if you have any ideas, let me know those too. And I'll see you guys all next time with our regularly scheduled episode of Brick Bestiary.